I was 16 when my family kicked me out, not in some metaphorical, I'm done with you way. I mean, they actually packed up a trash bag of my stuff, shoved it into my arms, and told me not to come back. My name's Toby, and to be honest, I wasn't exactly the golden child, but I also wasn't a delinquent. I was the quiet one. The kid who stayed out of the way, kept his grades decent, and mostly lived inside his own head. But when you grow up around people who are always one bad day away from turning on you, being quiet doesn't help. If anything, it makes you easier to forget. We lived in a small town, one of those places where everybody knows everybody, and gossip spreads faster than common sense. My mom was the kind of woman who thrived on drama, the kind who looked for someone to blame whenever things went wrong. And my Aunt Rachel? She was worse. She had this sharp voice that could cut through brick, and a temper like she was always waiting for a reason to explode. She never had kids of her own, but that didn't stop her from acting like she was the world's foremost expert on parenting. She lived with us, temporarily, though that temporary arrangement had lasted for years by then. For years of her hovering in every conversation, judging everything I did, and making little comments about how boys like me ended up behind bars or in the gutter. It wasn't always like that. When I was younger, Aunt Rachel used to be nice. She bought me books on my birthday, even helped me build a model airplane once. But after she lost her job and moved in with us, something changed. She started treating me like I was in her way. I think maybe seeing me reminded her of everything she didn't have. Or maybe she just needed someone to dump her bitterness on, and I was the easiest target. The day everything fell apart started out weirdly normal. It was a Saturday, early October. I remember because I was supposed to help my friend Luke set up for his little brother's birthday party. I was halfway through a bowl of cereal when Aunt Rachel stormed in, her coat half on, her face twisted into that scowl I knew too well. "Where's my cash?" she snapped. I blinked. "What cash? Don't play dumb, Toby." I had $200 in my coat pocket. "It's gone." Now, you have to understand, I'd been accused of a lot of things in that house. Leaving the milk out, tracking mud into the hallway, using up too much Wi-Fi. But stealing? That was new. "I didn't take anything," I said, setting my spoon down. She didn't even hesitate. "Don't lie to me. I know you've been eyeing my stuff." I wanted to laugh. Eyeing her stuff? What? Her old purse and the broken phone she screamed at every day? "I didn't even go near your coat," I said, standing up. My heart was already thudding because I knew how this house worked. Once someone pointed a finger, the rest of the family followed. Sure enough, my mom came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's going on?" Aunt Rachel turned to her like she'd just found her star witness. "Toby stole from me. $200, gone. He's the only one here." And just like that, it didn't matter that I'd never stolen a thing in my life. It didn't matter that I had nothing to show for the supposed money I'd taken. No new clothes, no gadgets, not even a crumpled bill in my pocket. None of that mattered. Because when my aunt accused me, my mom didn't ask questions. She looked at me with disappointment already set in her face, like this was just the confirmation she'd been waiting for. "Toby," she said slowly, "if you took it, now's the time to be honest." I remember feeling this strange mix of fear and rage. Like, how could they believe this? How could they turn on me so fast? "I didn't take anything," I shouted, louder than I meant to. Aunt Rachel rolled her eyes. "Of course he denies it. That's what liars do." Within 20 minutes, it was like the walls of my own house turned against me. My mom went into my room and started tearing through my drawers. My little sister, Emily, who was only 10 but already good at reading the room, just sat on the stairs silently, watching like it was a show she didn't want to miss. They found nothing, of course, because there was nothing to find. But that didn't stop Aunt Rachel from acting like I'd already hidden the evidence, or spent it all, or buried it in the backyard. The logic didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. Only the story that made sense to them did. And in their eyes, the story was, Toby's always quiet, always off doing his own thing, probably up to no good. And now that money's missing? Well, it couldn't be anyone else. I tried pleading. I tried yelling. I even told them to check the neighbor's security camera to prove I hadn't left the house. None of it mattered. And then Aunt Rachel said the words that flipped the switch in my mom's head. "If he's stealing now, who knows what he'll do next? You better put your foot down before it gets worse." My mom looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Pack your things," she said. "You can't stay here if we can't trust you." I was 16. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a job. I didn't even have a proper suitcase. I packed what I could into a garbage bag, some clothes, my sketchbook, a few school books, and walked out without saying another word. No one stopped me. No one apologized. They just watched me go like it was some tragic but necessary decision. I ended up crashing at Luke's place that night. His parents were confused, but kind enough to let me stay while we figured things out. I told them it was just a misunderstanding and that I'd be back home soon. I didn't believe that, though. Not really. The next day, Aunt Rachel found the money. It was in her coat pocket. The same one she'd screamed at me about. She just missed it. Did she apologize? No. Did my mom call me and beg me to come home? Also no. Instead, I got a single text. Money was found. Still disappointed you lied. And that was it. Years passed. I never went back. I built something for myself from scratch. It was hard. There were nights I slept in borrowed beds. Mornings I went to school running on caffeine and anger. But I made it. I graduated. I worked. I carved out a life without them. And then last week, I got a message out of nowhere. It was from Aunt Rachel, the same woman who tossed me out like trash. The woman who falsely accused me and never looked back. The message read, "You owe me for the stress you caused this family. Pay up and we'll call it even." No context. No apology. Just that. That was the moment something in me snapped. Something cold and calculated. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't a scared 16-year-old with a garbage bag of clothes. I had power, and I was going to use it. But before I could hit reply, I saw something in the message thread that made me freeze. She wasn't just demanding money. She was planning something. I didn't respond to her message right away. I couldn't. I just stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen, my heart doing this weird, slow thud in my chest. You owe me for the stress you caused this family. Pay up and we'll call it even. It wasn't just the entitlement. It was the absolute lack of self-awareness. Like none of it had happened. Like she hadn't destroyed my relationship with my family. Like she hadn't accused a 16-year-old of theft, turned the whole house against him, and watched him walk out into the world alone without blinking. But that wasn't even the part that broke me. It was the second message. The one I almost didn't scroll down far enough to see. Just 5 minutes after the first one, she'd sent another, shorter text. No punctuation. No greeting. You'll want to help before your sister graduates. My stomach dropped. It had been years since I'd spoken to Emily. The last time I saw her, she was 10 years old, sitting on the stairs while our mother tore my room apart looking for stolen money that didn't exist. I remembered her eyes, wide, confused, unsure if she was supposed to be afraid of me or feel bad for me. I didn't blame her for not standing up for me. She was just a kid. But after I left, she never reached out. No messages. No birthday texts. No attempt to see how I was doing. But I never stopped wondering about her. And now Aunt Rachel was using her name like a bargaining chip. I scrolled back up, reread the first message again, then opened her profile. Still the same profile picture from 3 years ago. A filtered selfie, heavy makeup, fake lashes, the kind of boss woman look she thought made her look powerful. I tapped on it. No updates. No photos of her or the family. Nothing public. But the bio said something new. Something I hadn't seen before. Proud business coach. Family first. I laughed out loud. Business coach? Since when? And what did family first mean to a woman who had helped throw out her own nephew? I didn't reply. Not that day. Not even the day after. But I didn't delete the message either. I just let it sit there, pulsing like an old wound I'd almost forgotten about. I started digging a little. Not out of pettiness, at least that's what I told myself, but because something didn't sit right. Why now? Why me? What did she mean by before your sister graduates? I found Mom's Facebook first. It had been inactive for years, but there were a few tagged posts from relatives. One of them was a blurry photo of Emily in a cap and gown, standing beside a banner that said, "Congratulations, class of 2025. So she'd already graduated, meaning Aunt Rachel was bluffing. Unless the ceremony hadn't happened yet. I did a little more sleuthing. Found an old friend of Emily's from middle school. Her profile was full of pictures, homecoming, prom, some selfies. And in one of them, there was Emily, a little taller now, more grown up, but still unmistakably my sister. The caption read, "One more week till we're done. Let's go." It was dated 3 days ago. So that was it. Aunt Rachel had timed her little message right before Emily's graduation. Like she assumed I'd be desperate to be part of it. Like she thought she still had that kind of power over me. But what she didn't know was that over the years, I'd been slowly collecting pieces. Not in some revenge-fueled way, at least not at first. It started as closure. Every now and then I'd look up a family member, scroll through public posts, see how things had turned out. Mom had lost her job during the pandemic. Aunt Rachel had been kicked out of another apartment. Something about failure to pay rent and a messy argument with a landlord. Even my cousin Matt had commented once, "Wish my mom would stop burning every bridge she walks on." Bit by bit, the image came together. The family had started crumbling after I left. Not because I was gone. God, I wasn't that self-important, but because the rot had always been there. I had just been the first to get thrown overboard. Still, I kept quiet. I lived my life. I focused on school, worked 2 jobs, shared a tiny apartment with a friend until I could afford better. I didn't look back. Not until that message reopened the door. "You owe me." I couldn't let that go. But the breaking point wasn't the message. Not exactly. The breaking point came 4 days later. I was walking home from work, earbuds in, mind drifting, when my phone buzzed. It was a new number. A voicemail. I almost ignored it, figured it was spam, but something told me to listen. I hit play. It was my mom. Her voice sounded older. Strained. Like someone trying to play calm, but losing the thread. "Toby, it's your mother. I didn't want to do this, but Rachel said you've been ignoring her. I know you're still angry, but you need to let things go. It's been years. Emily's graduating, and we all think it's time you showed some responsibility. Rachel said you've done well for yourself. Maybe it's time to give back. She's the one who took you in when we didn't have room. She's the reason you even had a place to sleep. Don't forget that. You might think we wronged you, but we were trying our best. Anyway, Rachel has a proposal. Call her back. And Toby, don't make this harder than it has to be." I stood there for a full minute after the voicemail ended. Just breathing. Processing. She really believed that. She really thought they'd taken me in, like I hadn't been their responsibility to begin with. Like I was some stray they graciously allowed under their roof. She actually said I should give back. That was when something inside me finally snapped. The thing I'd been holding together for years. The illusion that maybe, one day, we'd talk it out. That maybe, deep down, they regretted what they did. That maybe they missed me. No, they hadn't missed me. They'd forgotten me. Until they needed something. I called Luke that night. We hadn't talked much lately. Life got busy, but he picked up like no time had passed. "I need your help," I said. There was no hesitation. "Say the word." We met at our usual spot, this little park behind his old school, where we used to hang out as kids. I told him everything. The messages. The voicemail. The way they were trying to manipulate me, using Emily as bait. He shook his head, jaw clenched. "I can't believe they have the nerve." "I don't even know what the proposal is," I admitted. "I don't think I want to." "Then don't," he said. "Cut them off. Block them. You don't owe them anything." "I know," I said. "But it's not that simple." Luke gave me a long look. "You still care about Emily?" I nodded. And that was the worst part. Because she hadn't reached out either. Not once. But still, she was my sister. "Do you think she hates me?" I asked. "No," Luke said. "I think she learned not to ask questions. And in that house. That's survival." I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying everything. Aunt Rachel's voice, my mom's guilt trip, the moment I got thrown out. And I started thinking about that day again. The day she accused me of stealing. There had been something strange about it. Something I hadn't thought about in years. She was wearing that coat when she came into the kitchen. Already half on. Meaning she was already leaving. And she hadn't noticed the money was missing until right before she left. But later, I remembered overhearing something. 2 days after I was kicked out, when I came back to pick up a textbook from the porch, I'd stood outside for a second too long and heard Aunt Rachel inside, talking to someone on the phone. I swear I looked everywhere. It was in the lining or something. Don't know how it got there. But he was acting shady, anyway. After Luke and I talked, I walked home in the dark, the streets buzzing with that low hum of city life winding down for the night. Headlights flicked across buildings. The wind bit at my skin, but I hardly noticed. My thoughts were louder than any of it. That voicemail had cracked something open. It made me realize just how far I'd buried the pain, how neatly I'd folded it up and tucked it away like an old receipt I didn't want to look at anymore. But now it was in my hands again, wrinkled and raw. My family didn't just cast me out. They rewrote the story after I left, made themselves the victims, turned my absence into a convenience. I didn't exist until I was useful again. And that realization, it gutted me. I didn't go into work the next morning. I just stayed in bed. The walls of my apartment suddenly felt too close, the air too heavy. I barely touched my phone. Skipped breakfast. Didn't shower. My boss texted once around noon. Everything okay? I didn't reply. I couldn't. I just lay there, eyes open, staring at a crack in the ceiling like if I focused hard enough, it would give me answers. That week was the closest I ever came to losing myself. Not just emotionally, physically too. I stopped showing up. Stopped caring. A pile of unopened mail stacked up on my kitchen counter. Bills. Rent reminders. I ignored them all. I kept telling myself I just needed a day or two, that I'd pull myself together. But one day bled into the next, and suddenly a week had passed. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, Luke showed up. He didn't knock. He used the spare key I'd given him years ago, the one I forgot he even had. The door creaked open. Toby. I didn't answer. He found me in bed, still wearing the same hoodie from 3 days ago, the blinds drawn so tight it felt like midnight. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at me. Eventually, he said, "This isn't you." I swallowed hard. "Maybe it is." "No," he said. "It's who they made you think you are." That hit me harder than I expected. He stayed for hours, brought me food, made me shower, opened the windows, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. Later that night, after he left, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I clicked into an old folder labeled Ideas. It was a dumping ground for every random thought I'd had over the past few years. Sketches, plans, unfinished projects, startup ideas I never followed through on. I scrolled for hours, reading through them one by one. And somewhere in the middle of a forgotten document titled App Concept, Local Helper Network, something clicked. That was the night I started rebuilding. At first, it was small things. I made a to-do list, cleaned my apartment, called my boss and apologized for disappearing. She was surprisingly kind about it. Said she was glad I was okay. Then I dug into the app idea. It was basic. A platform where people could find neighbors to help with odd jobs, lifting furniture, tutoring, walking dogs. I didn't have the money to hire a developer, but I knew how to build a prototype. So I stayed up late coding. Taught myself what I didn't know. Rewatched old tutorials. Bit by bit, I pieced it together. By the end of the month, I had a rough demo. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt proud of something. I called it FavorLink. The name made me laugh. A little ironic, considering everything with my family. But it stuck. I pitched the idea to a few small startup groups. Got some polite no thank yous. One guy told me it was too niche. Another said it lacked scale. But then I got a call from a woman named Renee. She ran a local incubator for young tech entrepreneurs and wanted to see the demo. We met in a coffee shop a few days later. She tested the app for 15 minutes, asked a bunch of sharp questions, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "This is rough, but smart. I want to help you polish it." I almost cried. She helped me get it off the ground. Showed me how to pitch, how to navigate early-stage funding, how to avoid rookie mistakes. We worked day and night. I was still holding down a part-time job, barely scraping by, but I was fueled by something new. Purpose. By the end of the year, FavorLink had launched in 3 neighborhoods. Nothing big, just local. But it was real. People were using it, leaving reviews, sharing it. I stayed quiet about it. Didn't tell anyone from my past. Didn't post about it under my real name. I wasn't hiding exactly. I just wanted to build something that was mine, untouched by their hands, unstained by their opinions. I stopped checking my mom's Facebook. Stopped Googling Aunt Rachel. I told myself they weren't part of my world anymore. And for a while, that was true. Until Emily found me. It was a random Tuesday. I was going through back-end updates when my email pinged with a new message through the contact form on the site. I almost ignored it. It was usually spam, but the subject line caught me off guard. "Are you my brother?" My hands froze on the keyboard. I opened it. The message was short, hesitant. "Hi, I'm not sure if this is you, but someone told me this app was created by a guy named Toby. And if that's true, I think you're my brother. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you, but I just need to know if you're okay. Emily." I stared at the screen for a long time. So many emotions hit me at once I couldn't name them. Guilt, anger, hope, resentment. But underneath it all, a flicker of something warm. The little brother in me still remembered the kid she used to be. The way she'd sneak me cookies when Aunt Rachel wasn't looking. The way she'd sit on the floor beside me while I drew, humming to herself, like we had our own world. I replied. We talked for hours that night. Then again the next. And the next. She told me everything. How things had gotten worse after I left. How Aunt Rachel basically took over the house. How our mom had fallen deeper into debt, blaming everyone but herself. How Emily had learned early on to stay quiet, to keep her head down. I wanted to reach out, she said. But they monitored everything. I didn't even get my own phone until I was 17. And by then, I didn't know if you even wanted to hear from me. I told her the truth. I always wanted to. We started rebuilding something. Not all at once. Carefully. Like walking across a frozen lake, testing each step. But it was something. She asked me about FavorLink. I told her how it started. How I hit rock bottom and clawed my way back. How Luke never gave up on me. How every little success felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. She said she was proud of me. And that broke me in a whole new way. It had been so long since anyone from my family said those words. A few days later, she called me in tears. She's planning something, Toby. Who? Aunt Rachel. That name still made my stomach turn. What is it? I don't know exactly, she said, voice shaking. But she keeps bringing you up. Like bragging. She said something about you being well off now, and how you owe the family for everything they did for you. She's trying to talk Mom into contacting you again. I clenched my jaw. Of course. They hadn't changed. They'd just been waiting. Waiting for me to become useful again. Emily hesitated. She said if you didn't pay her back, she'd make sure people knew who you really were. Whatever that means. I exhaled slowly. It means she's bluffing. Again. I believe you, she said. I just thought you should know. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. That call changed something. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting Emily. Making sure she didn't get pulled into their games again. And maybe it was time to stop playing defense. Maybe it was time to take control of the board. So I started preparing. It was strange, planning a counterattack against people who'd once tucked you in at night. But by the time I hung up with Emily, I wasn't operating on nostalgia anymore. I was focused. Cold. Focused like I hadn't been in years. Every part of me that used to hope they'd change, hope they'd apologize, hope they'd just see me, had gone silent. All that remained was the quiet logic of a man who'd finally stopped giving second chances. They wanted money. They wanted to rewrite history. They wanted me back on the hook, maybe even in their debt. I was going to give them something else entirely. And it was going to start with Aunt Rachel. After all, she was the one pulling the strings. My mom. She was complicit, sure. She let it happen. She kicked me out. But Rachel was the infection that spread through our family like rot. She used people like tools. Bent truth like wire until it suited her version of the world. I didn't know what she was after yet. Money, clout, both. But I was done waiting to find out. It was time to bait the hook. First, I created a burner email. Something clean, nothing traceable. I attached it to an alias, G. Thompson, and wrote a short, cryptic message. Ms. Rachel, I represent a small angel investment group interested in minor stake opportunities with independent coaches and consultants. We noticed your social profile and wanted to inquire about any active business projects you're currently seeking partners for. Please respond if open to discussion. GT. Venture Bridge Initiatives. I didn't expect a reply, but I got one the same day. She was interested. Of course she was. Her response was twice as long as mine, full of buzzwords she didn't fully understand. Community-based brand growth, personal empowerment channels, scaling digital influence. She linked a YouTube channel I'd never seen before, 5 videos, all of them with fewer than 200 views. She referred to herself as a growth strategist and claimed to have over a decade of experience mentoring others. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. There was a PayPal link in her bio. I clicked it. It went to a business strategy session form. Cost $249 for a 60-minute call. She was selling air. I forwarded the email to myself, then saved every file and screenshot into a folder titled Exposure. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I'd need receipts. Then, I contacted Emily. You were right, I told her. She's running some kind of fake consulting scam. Emily replied almost instantly. She's been trying to get Mom to invest in her brand. I think she's broke, Toby. She said she was down to her last $1,000. Good. That meant she was desperate. I sat with that for a moment, letting the thought marinate. The woman who accused me of stealing, who threw me out for $200 she lost in her own coat, was now clawing for cash. Poetic. I went back to the favor link admin panel and adjusted something in the backend. I didn't want this connected to the company in any way, so I set up a dummy landing page, a private one, and created a fake success story for G. Thompson. A flashy mock portfolio. Some made-up screenshots of supposed crypto returns and investments in small lifestyle brands. I sent another message. I'd be interested in a small mentorship test run, perhaps a session or two at your usual rate. If results are promising, we'd be open to discussing a longer-term equity partnership. Within 10 minutes, she replied with a calendar link. She'd booked me for Sunday, a $249 session up front. She didn't even ask questions. That's when I realized how easy this was going to be. While I waited for Sunday to come around, I got to work on the second phase of my plan, seeding the truth. For years, my family had told their version of what happened. That I stole money. That I ran off. That I was ungrateful. People in our hometown probably believed them. I'd never set the record straight. Now I was going to. But not with a public rant. Not with some emotional call-out post. I was going to use the one thing Aunt Rachel valued more than anything. Reputation. I started with reviews. She had a few business pages scattered around, an old Facebook coaching page, a YouTube, a semi-dead Instagram account. I gathered a few trusted friends, Luke included, and had them leave perfectly reasonable, vague reviews. Booked a session, but it felt rushed. I was asked to pay for a follow-up without getting anything valuable. Lots of buzzwords, not much substance. Expected more for the price. Seemed distracted during the call, and I never received the personal plan she promised. Not too aggressive, just enough to plant doubt. I staggered them out over a few days. Next, I tracked down her LLC filing. It wasn't hard. She used her real name and address. It was barely holding together. No professional site. No legal disclaimers. No client agreements. Just a cash funnel dressed up in Canva templates. I compiled all of it. Every inconsistency. Every shady charge. Every fake review she'd posted from burner accounts of her own. Then I reached out to a small but fast-growing online business scam watchdog page I'd followed for years. I sent them a detailed, anonymous tip. Subject, Rachel B. Fraudulent Business Coaching Services. Hello. I'd like to report a potentially fraudulent coach who appears to be charging clients for services she is unqualified to provide. She uses fake testimonials and has multiple inconsistencies across her platforms. Her PayPal has no refund policy, and she has been known to solicit vulnerable individuals for upfront investments. Attached, screenshots, links, and case evidence. Concerned party. It was enough. Now I just had to wait. When Sunday rolled around, I logged into Zoom as Gavin Thompson. Camera off, fake accent on. She appeared late, face filtered, lighting terrible, fake plant visible in the corner. Gavin, she chirped. So glad to finally connect. She talked for 40 minutes. Didn't ask a single meaningful question. Just rattled off the same script she'd used in her videos. You have to position yourself as a premium brand. Never explain your value. Charge high and stand tall. People don't pay for knowledge. They pay for confidence. I recorded all of it. Near the end, I asked a simple question. How did you get into coaching? She paused, blinked, then smiled. Oh, it's a long story. But let's just say I've always had a knack for leadership. Even when I was younger, I used to mentor people in my own family. I could hear the pride in her voice. I helped one of my nephews once, she added casually. Total disaster of a kid. I basically raised him. Taught him everything. And now he's off somewhere pretending like he did it all himself. I almost choked. She believed her own delusion. After the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. Not angry. Not even hurt anymore. Just stunned by how far she'd twisted the story. Then, as I was shutting down my laptop, I got a notification. The scam watchdog account had posted something. It was a takedown report. Not directly naming her, but everything in the post matched. The screenshots. The lies. The fake testimonials. In the comments, people started connecting dots. I didn't reply, didn't engage. I just watched. Watched as the image she'd carefully crafted began to unravel. Emily messaged me later that night. Did you see what someone posted about Rachel? I played dumb. No, what happened? She sent me the link. People are saying she's a fraud. She's freaking out. Keeps yelling at mom about malicious trolls. I waited a beat, then typed. Maybe people are just tired of being lied to. Her reply came a second later. I hope it all falls apart. Revenge isn't a loud thing. Not the kind that lasts. It's not a shouting match or a triumphant speech or some dramatic courtroom twist like in the movies. No, real revenge is quiet. It's the slow turning of gears, the cold satisfaction of seeing someone fall on the very sword they forged to wound you. And after I watched Aunt Rachel's carefully curated life start to crumble, after the fake testimonials were exposed, after the watchdog group's post went semi-viral, after I checked and saw her PayPal coaching link had gone dead, I knew I'd only lit the first match. But the fire was still spreading. She tried to do damage control, deleted everything, made her Instagram private, posted a teary video claiming she was being attacked by online bullies who didn't understand the pressure of being a female entrepreneur. It got less than 200 views. Half of them were probably hate watching. The other half, likely bots she bought years ago to inflate her numbers. Still, it wasn't enough for me. Because she wasn't the only one who needed to face consequences. My mother had let it happen, had stood beside Rachel and watched me be thrown out of my own home at 16 with a garbage bag of clothes and nowhere to go. She didn't just choose not to believe me. She decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience of compassion. She had years to make it right. She chose silence. And then, years later, she chose greed. I didn't need an apology. I didn't want a reconciliation. I wanted her to understand something even deeper, that she was no longer part of my story. But before I could deliver that final message, I needed to know something. Something that had been nagging at me ever since Emily reached out. Why now? Why had Aunt Rachel messaged me in the first place? Why stir the pot? Why threaten me? Why poke the bear after all this time? It didn't take long to figure it out. Emily helped me piece it together. The truth was simple and pathetic. Rachel had blown through her savings. She'd maxed out her credit cards trying to fund her coaching empire. Ads, gear, filters, some fake business course that promised to make her a six-figure brand in 6 months. None of it worked. Worse, she'd borrowed money from my mom. Thousands. And now my mom, who was already stretched thin, was panicking. She couldn't afford her mortgage. Utilities were behind. She'd been dipping into Emily's college fund without telling her. When Emily found out, she confronted her. "You had no right," she said. Mom's reply? "It's not like you were going to get help from Toby." That was the final straw. Emily came to stay with me the week after graduation. "Just for a few days," she said. But I told her she could stay as long as she wanted. She didn't ask for money, didn't want handouts. She just needed space, distance, a place to breathe. I gave it to her. And while she slept in the guest room, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. First, I contacted my lawyer. I'd hired one when FavorLink first gained traction. Smart guy, discreet. I told him I wanted to draw up something airtight. No loopholes, no chance of misinterpretation. I drafted a cease and desist. The language was precise, legal but personal. Any continued reference to Toby, last name, in association with family obligations, reputation, or implied debts will be considered defamation and harassment. Further attempts to solicit funds, contact business partners, or use personal likeness in stories or social media posts will result in formal legal action. This includes, but is not limited to, mentions of Toby, last name, on any public platform, fabricated stories implying financial support or personal misconduct, requests for repayment tied to familial duties. It was delivered by courier. Signed. Notarized. Legit. Rachel received hers on a Tuesday. Mom got hers the same day. Within 12 hours, I got an email from Rachel. All caps. "What is this? You think you can scare me? You owe US, Toby. You owe your family." I didn't reply. My lawyer did. Ms. last name. Further contact with our client outside formal channels will be interpreted as breach of the terms outlined in the cease and desist. Govern yourself accordingly. Klein and Patel LLP. Radio silence after that. But I wasn't done. There was still the matter of Emily's college fund. She'd earned scholarships, but not enough to cover everything. And thanks to my mother's dip into her account, she was short nearly $9,000. Emily was ready to take out loans, said she'd work part-time, said she'd figure it out. I didn't let her. Instead, I transferred the money anonymously, through a scholarship account I'd quietly set up months ago under the name the J Fund. J for Justice. E for Emily. She cried when she got the email. "Toby, did you?" I just smiled. Must be some generous stranger. She hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. That night, over takeout and bad movies. She asked me the question I hadn't let myself think about in years. Do you miss her? Mom, I thought about it. Really thought about it. And the answer surprised me. No, I said. I miss the idea of her. But that version of her never really existed. Emily nodded. She still thinks you'll come around. That one day you'll come home. I shook my head. I already am home. And I meant it. But there was still one final move left. Not for revenge. For closure. I sent my mom one last letter. Not a legal one. A personal one. It was short. Dear Mom, I used to replay that day over and over, wondering what I could have said to make you believe me. But now I see that it wasn't about what I said. It was about who you chose to be. You chose to trust a liar over your own son. You chose silence over accountability. You chose comfort over truth. I forgive you, but I don't want you in my life. Please don't contact me again. Toby. I never heard back. But a week later, Emily told me the house was up for sale. Apparently, Rachel had moved out after the scandal, burned too many bridges, couldn't keep up the act. My mom was broke, embarrassed, and finally alone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath for years. Emily stayed with me for the summer. We got into a rhythm, morning coffees, grocery trips, long conversations. She started calling me Big Bro again. I started sketching again, too, something I hadn't done since high school. It felt good. Natural. By fall, she had her dorm assignment. I helped her move in, watched her light up meeting her roommate, watched her hang posters and talk about clubs and classes. I stood there, proud, grateful, grounded in the knowledge that I didn't just survive my family. I outgrew them. On the drive home, I took a detour. Drove past the old house. It looked smaller than I remembered. Weeds growing up the side. Paint chipped. The for sale sign hung slightly crooked in the front yard. No one was home. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't the scared 16-year-old they threw out anymore. I was the man who built something from nothing. I was the man who chose himself. And as I drove away, I realized the real revenge wasn't the cease and desist. It wasn't the takedown posts or the money or even the silence. The real revenge was this. They'd spent years pretending I didn't matter. And now, they no longer mattered to me.